Southeast Asia. This is basically an event to commemorate the 2023 International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists. And with us today, the political counselor for Mission of Canada to ASEAN, Mr. Abdurrahman Salman, and he will be sharing with us his point of view and to open our session today. Brother Abdurrahman, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Papa Imran. Thank you. Hello, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished speakers. Again, Mr. Moderator, Papa Imran Nuruddin. Good afternoon to you all, and thank you for having me here. I won't keep you long from the important discussion that you're about to have, so let me keep this very brief. As some of you may know, Canada and ASEAN have been partners over the last 46 years, promoting our shared goals and priorities, from advancing peace and security and gender equality to growing inclusive economies that benefit the peoples of Canada and Southeast Asia. This was evident at the ASEAN-Canada Summit this past September, where we launched the ASEAN-Canada Strategic Partnership. This historic elevation of our relationship reflects Canada's commitment to increasing its presence in the region and engagement with ASEAN, and reflects our fundamental commitments to an open, inclusive, transparent, and rules-based regional architecture in the ASEAN region. In this context, that also means engaging and supporting more on principles that matters to us. One of those is democracy. Further, the question is, how do we promote democracy through access of information? And we all know access of information starts with media freedom. Media freedom is a cornerstone of democratic societies and essential to the protection of human rights, fundamental freedoms, and universal values anchored in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The capacity to speak truth to power is increasingly under attack. The media play an essential role in defending and advancing the truth around the world, and journalists must be allowed to report facts freely and independently. Attacks and acts of intimidation against journalists and other media professionals are on the rise. There is also a trend toward increased restrictions on free expression online, resulting from measures taken by some governments to censor or control digital technologies. It is clear that bolder action is needed to address the evolving environment that we find ourselves in today. By the very nature of the global information ecosystem, media freedom is something that cuts across traditional notions of national borders and therefore necessitates global cooperation in order to protect it. In particular, the rise of the internet presents several challenges. Some, whether state or non-state actors, are increasingly using the digital space to target journalists and censor information. Under the Southeast Asia context, some of you, and I'm very happy to see at least from the panelists, we have panelists from Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, Malaysia, and I'm sure the participants as well will have diverse background. So under the Southeast Asia context, some of you will celebrate one of the essential expressions of democratic practices, the elections. And in light of this, there is an even greater need to protect and promote the crucial role of independent media. In this regard, Canada is proud to have been leading international efforts on media freedom, including through the Media Freedom Coalition. The coalition is a group of 52 states who share a common objective of promoting and protecting media freedom. The diverse group of states participating reflects global interest and preoccupation about this issue, including how we can better respond to the violation and abuses we are witnessing around the world. On a more regional level, we are passionate to be working with partners like the Press Freedom Monitoring in Southeast your cause to ensure access of information is provided in the most responsible manner and with integrity. In fact, I'm informed by my CFLI colleagues that one of our speakers today, Mr. John Antiquera, is also one of our former CFLI recipients to his organization, the Asian Network for Free Elections. Hello again, John, and thank you for joining us today. Allow me to say a few words about the Canada Fund for Local Initiatives, or CFLI. Each year, the Government of Canada works to support high-impact, results-oriented projects in 120 countries worldwide. My team here works with projects that have a regional impact in Southeast Asia. Projects that we support this year are centered on the themes of advancing democratic values, accountable governance, and gender equality. It is the work of the Press Freedom Monitoring in Southeast Asia Coalition to document and report on instances of violence against journalists and attempts to suppress important voices. Your dedication and passion is what makes us believe and encourages us to keep going. Beyond these specific initiatives, Canada will be actively seeking opportunities to raise the issue of media freedom in the multilateral system. Canada is also dedicated to continuing to deepen our partnership and assistance to the region to help strengthen the regional policy agenda and reinforce ASEAN institutions, organizations, and networks in addressing shared regional development priorities. Furthermore, Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy is an example of how we have prioritized the building of strong and mutually beneficial relationships across the region, and it's proof of Canada's commitment to actively contributing to ASEAN priorities and objectives to help ASEAN achieve its regional economic and development goals. In conclusion, I'd like to reiterate what a pleasure it is for me to join you this afternoon and highlight Canada's continued support for the Press Freedom Monitoring in Southeast Asia Coalition. Your work will contribute to the development of an inclusive and democratic processes that will lead to better outcomes for all. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Wonderful insights, information, and support from Mr. Abdul Rahman on behalf of the mission of Canada to ASEAN. We are delighted to be having such support, and very happy to see Mr. John is part of your alumni, and this is where we want to see how things goes, where we keep on things being prosperous from time to time. And taking from the speech just now, I think one of the most important part that we agree, and one of the reasons why we are here, is that we agree that the attacks on the media is on the rise, and there's a lot of there has been efforts to censor and control digital technology, where the technology is supposed to help us, supposed to liberate the information, but there are efforts to, of course, to stop information from spreading out. And likewise, when he mentioned about coalitions, I would like to also share that the event today, with support of the Canadian mission of Canada to ASEAN, is also a part of the effort of joint coalition between 7 organizations around the region. From Indonesia, we have Aliansi Jurnalis Independent. And then from Timor Leste, we have Association of Journalists Timor Leste. From Cambodia, we have Cambodian Journalists Alliance Association. From Malaysia, we have Center for Independent Journalism. Another one from Malaysia, the one I'm from, Gerakan Media Merdeka. And then from Philippines, National Union of Journalists of the Philippines, NUJP. And from Thailand, we have Prachatai from Thailand. So this is, a working, it's a living coalition. We are active in communication to another. And recently, we have released a joint statement against the brutality against journalists in the Gaza, situation that we're currently happening. So let me give a background of the event that we're going to have today. The weaponization of law against press freedom in the Southeast Asia has taken to a new and alarming form as legal intimidation targeting journalists are strategically employed to suppress undesirable narratives and restrict public discourse. We also see from the country representative from the Press Freedom Monitoring in Southeast Asia Coalition, we found a similar challenges related to the problematic law in various countries in the region. Countries like Indonesia and Thailand have regulation under the Personal Data Protection Act law or Data Personal Act in the Philippines, which specifically regulates data protection and privacy, both electronic and non-electronic systems for Indonesia law. The aim is to protect rights and interests of data subjects whose personal data is collected, used, or dislocated by data controllers or data processors. This law also sets out the obligation and responsibilities of data controllers and processors who are legal persons who have the authority or duty to handle personal data. But the law failed to give an exception for the press or journalists to work for informing more widely the public interest information. The risk they face in the limitation of journalists and media outlets' ability to expose corruption or public issues that involve personal data of individuals, especially if they do not have their consent or cooperation. It happened recently to Jose Rizal Pages of a Philippine journalist who got arrested after he allegedly accessed the Iriga City Police Station's brother, a register of crime incidents or other significant events in the city on August 2nd, 2023. He was later scanned for he allegedly scanned for the records without proper authorization, and the journalist was taken into arrest without warrant. And since 2016, and just to put another layer of the context, Cambodia has been developing a draft cybercrime law. The proposed law would provide judicial, police, and courts the authority to look into cybercrimes in Cambodia and other connected crimes. Not only that, the cybersecurity law is also being drafted to enhance the security and resilience of Cambodia's critical information infrastructure and national defense. However, there are concerns regarding some clauses in the proposed legislation that may authorize the government to intensify its suppression of freedom of expression while also raising issues with privacy and data collection. The proposed regulation has drawn criticism for endangering online free expressions, including press freedom, privacy rights, and the expansion of internet surveillance. And just like Indonesian media organizations and activists who are currently advocating to develop the implementation of regulation under PDP's law, the Malaysia media and civil society also initiated the amendments to the Printing, Press, and Publication Act. This is what we have to face in Malaysia, yeah. And the Communications and Media Act, especially Section 23. This law is often problematic in terms of its implementation, In August 2023, the Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission, MCMC, blocked news portal TV Pertiwi after complaints about the content that was broadcast without mentioning the specific legal violation of it contained. Not only that, the other news website, Utusan TV, also experienced the same problem. Their website had been blocked by MCMC, resulting in local telecommunications companies blocking related access. Criminalization against journalists using rubbery articles on these laws also has potential to the risk to the journalist safety. Especially during the election period, journalists have an ethical responsibility to produce reports that meet standards of accuracy, neutrality, independence, and social responsibility. During the data clarification and verification procedure, it is possible for them to obtain access to the candidate's personal information in order to provide reliable information to the voters. Anyone who is threatened by the findings of journalists' work may use legal tools like the Personal Data Protection Law to discredit the findings and the journalists who reported them. Further action may result in legal and social prosecution by the candidate supporters. Undoubtedly, this has the potential to threaten both press freedom and freedom of expression. The act of restricting journalists from fulfilling their professional duties and limiting voters of adequate information regarding candidates' backgrounds, hence hindering their ability to make informed choices. To commemorate the International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists, members of the Press Freedom Monitoring in the Southeast Asia Coalition will conducting a panel discussion titled Weaponization of Law Against Press Freedom in Southeast Asia. And today we will talking deeper about the matter. Before we go further, I will allow our host to share a clip that will give us some idea about what we're working on and what we do. And yeah, please, let's go for it.
Menarik, bukan hanya sekedar kuih tinta. Kami adalah wakil publik.
In this digital age of information,
we are voicing the voiceless.
To publish the verified and public interest news.
Work without fear.
However, in the region and in our own country,
we still face many threats and challenges.
From online harassment and digital attack.
No criminalization and surveillance.
We are human rights defenders.
We are guardians of democracy.
We are not criminals and enemies.
We are not afraid to resist.
We demand digital safety and security.
We demand internet freedom and privacy.
We demand justice and solidarity.
We demand respect and dignity.
We hope for a better future
where we can connect and collaborate.
Where we can inform and educate.
Where we can create and innovate.
We are journalists.
Our voice
matters.
Okay, that's the video that should give us some kind of warm up, the feeling, the music, give us some sort of burning. And today I would like to introduce speakers for our panel. First, we have Miss Anna Lomatz she's a program specialist, communications and information for UNESCO in Jakarta office. However, she will be sharing her views via a video. And we also have another 3 panelists who are attending with us today live. Number 1, Mr. John Rayner, Senior Program Officer Outreach and Communications of ASEAN Network for Free Elections, UNFREL. And we have Ms. Ika Ningtyas, Secretary General of the Alliance of Independent Journalists, AJI, from Indonesia. And we have Mr. Jonathan, Chairman of the National Union of Journalists of the Philippines, NUJP, welcome, welcome. Very happy to meet all of you. And the content of the format that we're going to do today is first, I will offer the floor for speakers to share their views on questions that I will pose. And then we will go for a panel, maybe a Q&A from me. And after that, we will open the floor to the public that attend this session. So for every speakers, we are giving around 20 minutes. Don't worry, just go slowly. You know, we have time. Don't worry, we have time. Okay. Maybe we will start the ball rolling by video from Miss Anna. And among matters that she will address are about how the situation of emerging regulation of law suppresses press freedom in Southeast Asia. And then she also cover on the best practices that have been done internationally to overcome this situation, and the importance of international support to interfere with the problematic law that we are facing. Okay, let's listen from Miss Anna.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Lomtadze, and I am in charge of UNESCO Jakarta's programming on press freedom and media development. For those of you who may not know, the Jakarta office is a multi-sectoral regional office covering Brunei Darussalam, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Timor Leste. I would like to thank AJI and the entire coalition of press freedom monitoring in Southeast Asia for organizing this timely event and for inviting me to speak. I will address three main topics. First, the overview of the situation globally and specifically in Southeast Asia in terms of legal challenges to press freedom. Second, key recommendations in line with international standards. And then third, the role of an international intergovernmental organization such as UNESCO and its resources or support that you could benefit from. So let me start with the global overview, which, as you all know, does not look very promising. Based on UNESCO's data, approximately 85% of the world's population has experienced a decline in press freedom in their country in recent years. Around the world, journalist imprisonment is at record high. According to the Committee to Protect Journalists, 363 journalists, a staggering number, were jailed at the end of 2022. Legal attacks are happening everywhere, including in the world's leading democracies. According to the 2022 Global Expression Report issued by Article 19, Asia-Pacific scored as the second most in-crisis region, surpassed only by the Middle East and North Africa. Many of the largest declines in expression were localized specifically in Southeast Asia. The key form of legal harassment against journalists, but also other human rights defenders, has to do with strategic lawsuits against public participation, whereby individuals are prosecuted by states or litigated against by third parties with the specific intention of discouraging, intimidating, challenging, financially draining a defendant, and ultimately silencing any form of criticism or public interest journalism. The legal provisions commonly forming the basis of SLAPP cases in Southeast Asia include civil or criminal defamation, insult, libel, sedition, blasphemy, terrorism, publication of so-called fake news, as well as the criminal charge of insulting a country's monarchy. Journalists are also targeted by claims related to tax laws, trade secrets, and copyright infringement. The two main developments I'd like to mention are the COVID-19 pandemic and the advancement more broadly of digital communications. These have served as the basis for introducing new laws and regulations that supposedly take aim at mis- and disinformation, cybercrime, or hate speech, but with potentially grave implications for press freedom. To be more specific, since 2016, at least 57 laws and regulations across 44 countries have been adopted or amended that contain overly vague language and disproportionate punishments that threaten press freedom and freedom of expression at large. In this context, there have been instances in which COVID-19 related intimidation, arrests, criminal investigations, prosecutions, integrated references to slander, defamation, damaging the image of administration, insulting public officials, state symbols, or a religion. UNESCO's research has come across such cases, either as standalone offenses or most often combined with others, in close to 30 countries, spanning all regions, with Asia and the Pacific unfortunately standing out as the one where these appeared to be most common. Another concerning trend has been the rise in the use of civil defamation across all regions, particularly in countries that have decriminalized it. In many cases, this practice attempts to bankrupt journalists and media outlets through disproportionate financial sanctions, which in turn encourages self-censorship. Finally, the globalized nature of digital communications poses other challenges to protecting reputations while also respecting freedom of speech. Journalists, activists, and private citizens can face defamation charges for online posts, even if written as satire or joking, or for sharing hyperlinks or information originally published by others. There have also been cases in which online news portals have been held liable for comments posted by readers, and of plaintiffs seeking liability for suggestions or results shown by search engines claiming that these were defamatory. Now, when it comes to international standards and best practices, the international law is very clear. Freedom of expression is a core human right, which is guaranteed under international law and by virtually every constitutional bill of rights in the world. As you all know, Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights specifically mentions freedom of expression and the right to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. Freedom of expression is also protected under Article 19 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which is a binding treaty that has been ratified by most countries in the world, including in Southeast Asia. An important aspect to understand of the rights to freedom of expression is that it imposes both negative and positive obligations on the state. In its negative aspect, the right places an obligation on states not to interfere with the exercise of the right to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas, except, of course, as permitted under international law. And then the positive obligation is essentially to create an environment which supports a free flow of information and ideas, and includes elements such as the obligation to put in place a legal framework for accessing public information and to create an environment in which a free and independent media can flourish. Briefly, international law, of course, also recognizes that freedom of expression is not an absolute right and that it may, in appropriate cases, be restricted. But it can only be restricted in very exceptional circumstances in compliance with three-part cumulative test. Limitations to this right must be provided by law, which should be clear and accessible to everyone, have a legitimate aim, which is to protect the right or reputations of others, or to protect national security or public order, public health, or morals, and third, be necessary and appropriate, representing the least restrictive means to achieve the sought-for aim. At global level, the recommendations from the UN and other human rights bodies, also special rapporteurs on freedom of opinion and expression at the UN level, at the level of Americas, of Africa, of Europe, they all agree that states are encouraged to repeal criminal defamation laws, even if they are never or rarely used, and to replace them by appropriate civil defamation legislation. States are also encouraged to abolish or review in accordance with international standards other laws that criminalize expression through vague or overboard overbroad definitions pertaining to fake news, cybersecurity, terrorism, hate speech, public health, and national security, among others, which lend themselves to abusive restrictions of freedom of speech. Civil defamation laws should also be revised where needed to be brought in line with international standards. Some key aspects include, for example, that public officials should not benefit from special protection, and public bodies should not be allowed to file claims under defamation laws, which should not protect the state, national, or religious symbols either. Proper defenses should be in place, including the protection of statements of opinion, the proof of substantial truth, and the standards of reasonable publication, innocent publication, and fair and accurate reporting on the words of others. The claimant should bear the burden of proof regarding the falsity of a statement, at a minimum in cases that are of public interest. Remedies should be proportional, aiming to repair the damage caused by certain expressions rather than to punish those who made them. The remedies should also take into account the defendant's financial capacity and whether voluntary or self-regulatory mechanisms such as apology, correction, or right to reply have also been used. Finally, internet service providers should benefit from immunity from liability under defamation laws for content that they host. Any liability imposed on an internet service provider should remain proportionate and bear a direct correlation to its failure to comply with an order to restrict content. And now, in conclusion, a few words about the role of UNESCO as an intergovernmental organization. As you may know, UNESCO is the UN agency with a mandate to ensure freedom of expression and the safety of journalists around the world. It coordinates the UN Plan of Action on the safety of journalists and the issue of impunity. The organization also condemns and monitors judicial follow-up to every journalist killing. We work, when possible, with governments to develop supportive policies and laws and raise global awareness through events such as the World Press Freedom Day or the International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists, as we're doing today. Recently, in Indonesia, we've supported the Indonesian Parliamentary Center to bring together civil society, the media, and the government for a focus group discussion on the revision of the law on on disclosure of public information. We want to make sure that this revision process is in line with international standards and takes into consideration technological advancements and societal changes 15 years after its first adoption. We also work with judicial actors and security forces. We bring them together with the journalists. We have trainings that enhance their capacity to uphold international standards on freedom of expression, access to information, and safety of journalists. UNESCO has trained 24,000 judicial actors around the world and close to 12,000 security forces around the world, including in Indonesia and the Philippines. And finally, one program that you might be particularly interested in, and that some of you know actually quite well, is the Global Media Defense Fund. It is a multi-partner trust fund administered by UNESCO, which was established in 2019 to address the need for a mechanism to reinforce the legal protection of journalists. In the past 3 years, over 3,000 journalists, 600 lawyers, and 100 NGOs from around the world directly benefited through the actions supported by this fund, including in the Philippines and in Indonesia. I would encourage you all to look online for when the call for applications is open and to try your luck. In closing, I would like to encourage you all to follow the UNESCO global commemoration of the International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists, which is taking place in Washington, D.C., but I believe part of the program is also available online. The discussion will focus on the interconnections between violence against journalists, the integrity of elections, and the safety of journalists covering conflicts. In closing, I would like to thank you all for your relentless efforts and the contributions you make, and to wish you a safer year ahead. Thank you very much.
You are welcome, and I really love the last part of the speech when she wished the best and safer year ahead. And as we know right now, as we speak, I think reports that we received today, 33 journalists has been killed in the Gaza conflict, and this is something that we do not want to see further. And it's very unfair for a person that's just doing the job and have been losing life for just doing what's right. And right now, I will move on with our second panelist, Mr. John Rayner. This is a moment where I will share with you. I will read to you some of the information about Mr. John. He is a senior program officer for outreach and communication for ANFREL, that is for Asian Network for Free Elections. He is not new when it comes to talking about freedom of media, talking about elections, and he has been consistently and being in the field, and for his current post, he has been holding since September 2019 until now. He has led ANFREL's media program and managing ANFREL's Asian Media Fellowship on Election Reporting and producing resources, including Media Reporting Toolkit for journalists in Myanmar and a study of election reporting in select countries in Asia. He served as election observer and electoral analyst in several observations missions in Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and Thailand. And he managed the digital assets of ANFREL, including website and social media accounts. That means if you want to talk to ANFREL, talk to Mr. John. So that is basically the message here. Previously, he has been an advocacy officer for Southeast Asian Press Alliance, SIAPA, from December 2018 to August 2019. Previously, he was also with the Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism and with the news house called GMA News. So, and of course, there's a lot more for me to read. But one thing important that we want to know, that he has also published reports. Among them, media reporting of elections in Asia, issues, challenges, and lessons, and then reporting on elections, a toolkit for journalists in Myanmar, and the 2020 Myanmar general elections, democracy under attack. For workshops, training, and conferences, he was the speaker for Indonesia Fact Check Summit in 2022. Also speaker for online training and ethical and professional reporting on election coverage in pandemic for Asian Institute of Journalism and Communication in September 2021. And he's a guest speaker for a podcast, The Game of Thrones, Understanding the Law on Fake News and the Disinformation. And he's also a speaker in Myanmar in 2020. So with the broad experience and with the broad information and knowledge that he has, just to share with you, he holds a Bachelor in Journalism from University of the Philippines, Diliman. And questions I will pose to our panel over here for Mr. John is, among them is, what potential arises from the election, including regarding press freedom and freedom of expression? And then with the political system and the existence of various regulations that we have potential limit that creates limitation to press freedom, are there any impacts on the public? And do you have cases on that? And what are the best practices that you have seen or can be done to overcome this situation? Mr. John, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I didn't know that you will read through my
So we all know you now, you know.
Thank you for that. Again, hello everyone. Thank you for inviting the Asia Network for free elections to this panel discussion. Personally, I would like to express our solidarity with our friends and our colleagues in the media who continue to defend press freedom and fight to end impunity. For the first question, I guess to be able to identify the potential risks to press freedom and free expression, especially during elections, we have to understand that the political environment in which the media and information landscape coexists. During elections, in highly politicized environments, especially amid restricted civic spaces and increasingly authoritarian regimes, threats and attacks against journalists and media workers are heightened. The spread of polluted information is quite rampant, and the limits and restrictions to access information and other rights and freedoms are imposed. But we also have to note that things don't suddenly change during elections, but that pre-existing conditions that contribute to the curtailment of press freedom and free expression are heightened, sometimes even remain unchecked and unaccounted for. This, of course, runs contrary to the very essence of elections, where they are primarily the articulation and exercise of rights and freedoms, including free expression, freedom of association, freedom of assembly, and the right to access information, among many others. At ANFRA, we have identified key electoral indicators of free, fair, and democratic elections, and among them highlight the role of the media in empowering the electorate through the delivery of timely and critical information that would help the electorate make informed choices, and in ensuring election integrity through the proactive monitoring of the electoral cycle that would secure the exercise of fundamental human rights. This has been noted in several documents that have been put together by various electoral stakeholders in recent years. So we also have to note that on the same level as stressing the importance of those roles, there are, of course, corresponding responsibilities, especially the adherence to ethical and professional standards of journalism. In our observation of elections and our engagement with electoral stakeholders, including the media, among the challenges that journalists face during elections that we have observed are limits and restrictions on the coverage of election-related activities, such as campaign rallies, voting, and counting processes, limited access to information due to the lack of transparency, and selective or outright refusal of electoral stakeholders, including candidates and election management bodies, to face media scrutiny. There have also been a number of threats and attacks against journalists, especially those who are critical of certain candidates, and several news websites have been blocked. I think UNESCO released recently, just today, a report. They said that 759 journalists and media professionals from January 2019 to June 2022 have been attacked in 89 elections around the world. Lastly, for the first question, there's also the issue of declining trust in the media. There's an issue on media bias and the changing media landscape and habits of media users and their preferences in the digital age, as traditional media are no longer the major sources of information, which is then compounded by the ever-growing influence networks that spread disinformation. For your second question, I think it's not necessarily about a certain political system per se, but more about the prevailing culture, the existing laws and regulations, and those who interpret and enforce them. As much as laws are supposedly intended to protect and uphold rights and freedoms, there are laws that are abused and interpreted, if not directly intended, to limit and curtail free expression and press freedom. As has been observed in several instances in different countries in the region, laws related to cybercrime, data privacy laws, laws supposedly combating disinformation, and even access to information legislations have been used against journalists and the work that they do. Of course, defamation laws, especially those criminal in nature, are often abused and create a chilling effect. Some governments have been taking advantage of regulatory functions about providing operation licenses or media franchises to target critical media outlets. It is, as we see, as a worrisome trend, as the targets are larger because it's no longer just the individual journalists themselves, but an institution itself, and the implications are harsher because it sends a more chilling message to other media outlets that if they don't toe the line, then they could be next, and which eventually would lead to heavy self-censorship. We've seen this in Cambodia with the closure of Cambodia Daily, along with other radio outlets in 2017 prior to the 2018 National Assembly elections. And just recently in February this year, the Voice of Democracy's license was revoked prior to the 2023 National Assembly elections. In the Philippines, one of the biggest broadcast networks, ABS-CBN, failed to secure a franchise renewal and was subsequently ordered to stop broadcast operations in 2020. This incident was hugely attributed to the vindictiveness of then-President Rodrigo Duterte after the critical reporting of the network on Duterte's war on drugs and his gripe with ABS-CBN about allegedly unaired campaign ads during the 2016 election. But what we've also seen now are several instances, I think this has been mentioned by the previous speaker, of laws that may not seem to have direct negative impact on the practice of journalism, but are being misused and abused, like tax laws. News website Rappler, for example, in the Philippines was slapped with 5 tax evasion cases as part of the previous government's effort to crack down on critical media reporting on their policies. These cases have been dismissed, thankfully. The last one ruled only in September this year, but 2 cases remain in court. The appeal on the cyber libel conviction of Maria Ressa and Rappler's former reporter Reynaldo Santos Jr., and their appeal on the closure of Rappler. What exacerbates the potential of laws and mechanisms from being misused and abused are the ones who are tasked to interpret, implement, and enforce them. It becomes more dangerous when the full might and power of the government are employed to suppress independent and critical reporting to hold power to account. Lastly, these governments get away with what they do because of the lack of safeguards against misuse and abuse, the weakening of democratic institutions which are supposed to serve as checks and balances, and the dysfunctional judicial system wherein odds are stacked against you. For the last question, I think while the situation in the region paints a bleak image when it comes to the state of press freedom and free expression, if you look at indices looking at the state of press freedom, there have been a number of attempts, I think, and initiatives to shed light on issues and challenges that the media face, as well as push back against repressive actions. For one, of course, we'd like to commend and congratulate organizations in the Press Freedom Monitoring and Southeast Asia Coalition in your effort to come together and monitor attacks and threats against journalists and media workers. I think we also have to recognize the previous similar initiatives in the region and existing mechanisms at the national level. It's important to continue and beef up such initiatives as they are essential in upholding and protecting press freedom and free expression. I have identified 3, and I think this is not a comprehensive enumeration, but I'd like to focus on these 3 interconnected points, of which several initiatives have been taken in different countries in the region that could be further strengthened to help overcome challenges. These points include 1, improving media transparency and accountability, 2, increasing media engagement, and 3, fostering collaboration with a broader network of stakeholders. For the first point of improving media transparency and accountability, we have to recognize that there is a declining trust in the media, and that while there is not one size fits all solution, one thing that the media can improve on, and we've been seeing efforts to improve on this, is on how they are transparent when it comes to their reporting, the ethical and professional standards they uphold, and in providing platforms for redress of grievances and dialogue through the form of press councils, for example. I think if you ask people now if they know where they can complain about the shortcomings of the media they observe, there's actually a high chance that most of them would not know where to go and would resort to calling out the media in their social media accounts. But proper platforms to file complaints or engage in a dialogue and mechanisms to rectify shortcomings are necessary, not just to regain trust, but also to reclaim the media and information landscape amid the rampant spread of disinformation. For the second point of increasing media engagement, part of the media's responsibility is to help its stakeholders better understand and appreciate the functions of the media through media and information literacy. Part of that is allowing the people to know how the media works, how the media decides on information they provide, and the value of fair and balanced reporting, as well as the key roles and responsibilities of the public themselves in maintaining an ecosystem that's grounded on facts. There's a need to build a community not just to protect information flow, but also to rally them against threats and attacks against journalists. My last point is fostering collaboration with a broader network of stakeholders. I think this is best exemplified by several fact-checking initiatives in Indonesia and the Philippines that have inspired a similar initiative in Thailand, where you have different organizations, not just from the media, working on a unified goal of providing verified information and combating the spread of disinformation. I think a little shameless plug here for us, because it has been mentioned, the program that was supported by CFLI previously from ANFRO. I think it's also the cooperation and collaboration is the very foundation that our media fellowship on election reporting is built upon. That in order to achieve free, fair, and democratic elections, there's a need to cooperate and collaborate among different stakeholders to foster harmonious environment where different functions of various stakeholders are in sync towards a common goal. The program provides a platform for the media to connect with various electoral stakeholders and the work that they do in pushing for electoral democracy. I guess in a nutshell, you want to gain more allies and that stakeholders, especially now that media users are not just passive consumers, but active producers themselves, that appreciate and value factual information, the role of the media as among the primary beacons of truth, and the value of a well-informed citizenry that are able to freely articulate and exercise their rights and freedoms.
Thank you so much. There's so much that I can take from your sharing. And of course, I will follow up with the question that we will have later. Wow. I mean, there's so many things being put in such a short span of time. And I kind of smile as you share some of the points, especially on the initiatives, because for example, like fact-checking efforts in Indonesia has been also a model for other countries in this region. Fact-checking initiative in the Philippines too has been a role model of a what we call it a workable coalition in the region, and yeah, we'll talk about it a bit more later. Okay, wonderful. Seems like we are kind of ahead of time actually, so we do have longer time for discussion later. And right now I would like to introduce our next speaker, our next panelist, Mesika Ningtyas. She's the Secretary General of the Alliance of Independent Journalists, AJI. One thing about Mesika is she has been a journalist and defender of press freedom for the past 15 years. With skills, she produced journalistic works, doing research, designing programs, and so much more. She has been also active in producing books. By far she have like 5 books, and all of them are on investigative journalism, and of course combating misinformation. And I think let's pass the floor to her. And Mesika, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you, Imran. Hi, everyone. And I think your introduction is very kind for me. And yeah, I'm happy to being here and we have several perspective, diverse perspective from this region, and it's very important to can strengthen our collaboration in the future. Yeah, I have a short presentation that Novi, can you help me to present? Yeah, but before that, today we commemorate the day to end impunity for crimes against journalists with deep sorrow, because until today impunity has never ended, and instead we we witness the killing of journalists in the Gaza Strip, and genocides against the Palestine is ongoing. And that Imran mentioned before that at least 33 journalists in the Gaza, based the data from the Committee of Protect Journalists. Yeah, that's mean it's like this morning I made this presentation with the feeling that the current challenges in Indonesia are nothing compared to the grief and the suffering endured by journalists in the Gaza Strip. Yeah, we all urge all the world's leaders to act fully to stop this crime and bring it to justice. Okay, but as we join the global movement is responding to the situation in Gaza, let us, I will reflect on what is happening in Indonesia. And for this presentation, I would be to focus only about most dangerous regulation in Indonesia. That's it called Information and Electronic Transaction Law, or we can call UU ITE in Bahasa. And why we mentioned that is most dangerous for us, because this law is being used for many times to targeting journalists, for human rights defenders or others activists, and also the public. And it's very dangerous because Indonesia also want to face the next election in February 2024, and also because in this month we will face the first election campaign as a presidential election for 2024. Okay, next slide. In the page 3 maybe. Yeah, okay. Before that, I will to introduce about AJI, my organization. Yes, the Alliance of Independent Journalists, and or you can call AJI, was born in 1994, and our history is to fight the old authoritarianism. We call it old authoritarianism because after 20 years of struggle to reform the country for the dictator regime, we are now facing new authoritarianism armed with the information technology and the law to repress democracy, including civil liberties and press freedom. This is a very much related to why this law on cyber law was born. Since then, we have grown to nearly AJI now have almost 2,000 members, and we have 20 local branches across in Indonesia. Next. Okay, basically I will to giving a short background about the press freedom in Indonesia. Basically, press freedom in Indonesia has been protected in the 1945 constitutional amendment, and from this constitutional that guarantees of freedom of expression, and also continue with the 1919 law on the press. This law was born after the old authoritarianism collapse, and through this law there is giving a guarantee that there will be no more for press banning or censorship. The Press Council was then established to handle it's like a news reporting dispute. So the mechanism is very clear, state on the press law that if any objection or do you have a problem with the news or media in Indonesia, that it should be not be to resolve by criminal charge, but the mechanism is states that the dispute must provide the right to, it's like a clarification mechanism, and comply to the Press Council. And this process is giving mandatory to a Press Council to can it's like mediating of the case and publish is like a recommendation how the dispute can to solve. Yeah, so from this regulation is very good to can protect the media freedom in Indonesia. This is giving us like guarantee that the criminal process cannot be to targeted to journalists or independent media. But okay, next slide. Yeah, but we have like a disaster in 28 after the government and the parliamentary members issued by law number 11 of 28 is about information and electronic transaction. The initial spirits of the issuing of the IT law was actually to regulate electronic transaction in line with the development of the digital economy in Indonesia. This includes regulating about the legal position of electronic document, electronic signature, and how the use to it's like electronic document in a court, on the qualification of electronic evidence if you have a case in a court or something like that. However, during the discussion process, the House of Representatives or the parliamentary then included a number of criminal offenses in the online cyber that prohibit to spreading of inappropriate content. Then, okay, next. Yes, then there are defamation article, also hate speech article and misinformation article related to consumer. So the problem is that these articles are problematic because they contain loose of definition and very overbroad of definition, and call it with the freedom of expression, and also can be violated to press of freedom. In addition, that IT law treats for a legal uncertainty because it's overlap with another laws, especially the criminal code, by containing a multi-interpretative, it's like a multi-interpretative formulation, multi-interpretative about the definition, what about defamation or hate speech, something like that, that are easily misused for various interests. For example, if any journalist writes about the corruption from the public official, and also, yeah, maybe in a public figure, and they publish the news coverage in the online, or they can do a spread on social media. Yeah, so then the public official who the names of reveals on the reports can easily criminalize the journalist as defamation, or as misinformation, or as hate speech problem. Yeah, in 2019, the IT law was revised, and many civil society organizations urged the repeal of the problematic article. But the Indonesian parliament retained the problematic article. They only reduced about the prison center from 6 years to 4 years, but it still didn't to solve all the problem. On the contrary, the trend of the criminalization is getting higher, especially after the President Jokowi's second term in 2019, not only against journalists, but also targeting human rights defender, women who are being victims are sexual harassment, or the ordinary citizen who spreads the misinformation. Now this year, the government and parliament will revise the AJI law again, and we will to take the opportunity to can challenge the revise. Okay, in this slide, you can see about the impact on press freedom in Indonesia. AJI, we recorded at least 38 Indonesian journalists reported under this law from 28th to May this year because of their journalistic or their expression on social media. Yes, the example, if you have critique to public policy, or you shares about some things, or your experience about maybe about the situation or political situation in Indonesia, yeah, so very easily for everyone who can report you to the police as defamation or has been or with several problematic article from AJI law. Yeah, so 5 of them were sent to jails before, and the rest, yeah, we don't know about the continuous of their case on the police institution. Yeah, most of the journalists were charged with defamation and also hate speech. Okay, next. Okay, these are just a small sample of the hundred of victims. If we count with all the amount of activists and also human rights defender that has been targeting with this law. Yeah, this one, Diananta is the live site. Diananta is a journalist. Is from South Kalimantan or Borneo, South Borneo, who was sentenced to 3 months in prison after writing about land conflict in which large company says land belonging to indigenous community in South Borneo. Yeah, and the other side, his Asro, who was also sentenced to 3 months in prison after exposing alleged about corruption of public official in South Sulawesi. Yeah, but the impact is not only to disrupt about the both of a journalist, but also it's also affected their families and have a chilling effect on other online journalists. Yes, we also heard from the some journalists in Indonesia. They're worried if they want to publish about the sensitive issues like environmental issues or corruption issues, and continue they will to publish in online or on social media. Yeah, so they're afraid to can targeted by this AJI law. Yeah, so that's why this is very dangerous law that we face ongoing until maybe we don't know when the parliament or the government want to, revoke all the problematic article. Okay, next. Yeah, we are also have noticed that the misswing of cyber law to restrict of press freedom and also freedom of expression not only happen in Indonesia, but the trend is globally. And we can do, from the some research or some point from the GSO in globally. But we also know how we can to challenge this law, because the trends also has a concern about from the United States Agency. Like that in 2019, the United Nations General Assembly has expressed the concerns about the practice of cybercrime law being misused to target, inhibit, and harm human rights defender. And also from the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has warned that regulation related to cybercrime must expressly ensure their provision do not apply or can be interpreted to impose under restriction or conduct protected by human rights standard. I think from the both of the statement, clearly a statement from the international representative, it can make to opportunity to every journalist organization or human rights organization to can challenge and advocacy if any case the similar situation is like in Indonesia. Okay, next. Okay, so how our organization and also others human rights organization in Indonesia fight back to can revoke or to can concern this law. Yeah, now since the presidential Indonesian president promised to revise the AJI law, we have organized many efforts to advocate for the repeal of this problematic article. In 2021, as example, we were involved. It's like a national coalition within of more than 20 organizations join with this coalition. We launched a policy paper together. We held as a joint media briefing to gain support from the media, and also we held a demonstration and all digital campaign action to can get the support from the public, and also it's like support to making the government and the parliament members who can hear what the public's attention for this AJI law. Okay, next we also visited parliament and the communication of ministry, which is leading this AJI law revision. But to date we have not seen any good progress. I think we are worried that more criminal case will occur because Indonesia will soon, as I mentioned, will face the next election. Yeah, that sometimes this political situation will be influenced, and it will be making the civic space will be restriction more and more. Okay, and the last one, it's not only about the non-litigation action, but AJI and also our coalition issued us the legal action since 2029, 1 year after the AJI law was issued. Yeah, we sent the judicial review of defamation article to Constitutional Court, and then continue after the second revision. We also do judicial review of a specific internet government article to Constitutional Court after the internet shutdown in Papua, in Jakarta. Yeah, it's also regulating with this AJI law. And the last one in this year, but the process is still ongoing. Yeah, we push back to our action to send the judicial review specific of defamation article to Constitutional Court is part to give support for to human rights defenders Fatia and Haris, and because the case is still ongoing in Jakarta court, so that it's important we can to challenge against to constitutional court. But we note that sometimes that laws with like this really depend on the independence and accountability of our constitutional court, but effort to fight them using the available mechanism in your state, in your country, it still needs to be carried out as a corrective effort against the power, the ruling power. Yeah, so yeah, and I means that the very diverse action and how we can to collaborate more stronger is the key to can making the advocacy process can be better for the future. But maybe you can to also learn from the best practice from another countries to can challenge this law or the misuse of the defamation law or fake news law or some things like that. Yeah, I will stop here because I know that I want to hear from feedback from you or the best practice from you to can have an experience to can learn together about how we can to address the law can to restrict of the press freedom. Thank you. I will back to Imran.
Thank you so much, Ika. Okay, wonderful, full of information. And of course, there are things that I really want to ask you and touch later. But yes, I really appreciate the in-depth information about the UUITE or OOETA, right? Hopefully I pronounce it correctly. Okay, so and Ika explained about the Indonesian landscape and how the law has been suppressing the journalism in the country, and we have seen 5 journalists has been imprisoned, and we will talk about it later. I have a question on that, but yeah, let's keep it later for the next round. And now we will welcome Mr. Jonathan De Santos, a familiar face whenever we talk about press freedom in this region. He is currently the head of news for Philstar Global Corporation, and which home the news website of the Star. I mean, again, he has been very, very active in NUJP, and one of the person that has been trained by him was me for the for the journalist safety when we had the last session organized by AJI in Cambodia. And I will not hold you. Please, Jonathan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Just to clarify, I'm no longer with Philstar. I have switched companies, but yeah. But I'm still with NUJP, so that's correct. I only have brief points because well, in the interest of time, also because I only have 2 questions. One of the questions is how can the problem of legal impunity in journalism be addressed collectively? I think for us to be able to do that, it should start with awareness and sharing of information. And we have already done the groundwork for that. We have shared cases. We have discussed the particular problems in each country. But it's always helpful to know. And I think this was brought up in previous meetings as well, that we are facing very similar challenges. And it seems like our governments seem to be taking notes from each other, learning from each other. So in order for us to have to exercise or to have solidarity, we do need to know the situations in each country and find common ground. For example, I learned this afternoon that defamation and hate speech is commonly used against journalists in Indonesia. And we do face a similar threat. A lot libel or defamation is still a crime in the Philippines, and we have been campaigning for its decriminalization for decades. So knowing that other countries or journalists in other countries are facing similar challenges would be a good starting point for collective action or for, let's say, campaigns. No? Another advantage is another advantage of being in a coalition such as this is the opportunity for amplification. For example, if of course, we all know Maria Ressa of Rappler. Every time a Filipino journalist meets a colleague from another country, that's usually the greeting, or she usually comes up. And I don't think she would have gotten as much solidarity if journalist groups, if civil society organizations did not highlight her case. So that's one good way, that's one good example of how we can drum up support for our colleagues. Also, jumping from Rappler, is their development of their Facts First. It's a coalition as well of journalists, civil society organizations, schools. So it's a very diverse, very big tent. And the idea there is each member of the coalition will post like certain fact checks or post certain statements. So the reach will be larger. So given our diverse background as well, we come from different countries. That means also that there is an opportunity for us to bring certain issues across borders. No, amplification could also be done through cross-border reporting. No, as journalists. So that's another opportunity for us. I think we have started also with solidarity statements, which is always a good starting point. Personally, I would like to thank the coalition, no, for their support when I was accused of being a communist rebel. It was the statement of support came very quickly. Almost it only took maybe a day for all of us to come out with a statement, and that's really one example of how we can work together, and it's a good starting point. Moving forward, the second question is, what is the role that we can have as a regional coalition to strengthen the advocacy related to press freedom in Southeast Asia? As we know, a lot of our organizations used to be part of another journalist alliance, but for various reasons, it was before my time, but that organization has ended. And then when we got together, I think we agreed that the idea is not necessarily to replace the Southeast Asia Press Alliance, but to exist as a loose coalition, which means we can bring in more members. Our organizations can come and go, but the basic idea of us working together will always be there. I think it also helps that we have diverse backgrounds and different perspectives. So this has led to a good exchange on our chat group. Sometimes there are some disagreements, sometimes there's some debate, and I think that's healthy. Since we are journalists, part of a democratic institution, having that exchange of ideas is a very good thing. And it's also good that we have diverse perspectives, and there is no single line really. So we're free to disagree. We're free to, for example, not sign certain statements, or and that adds to the diversity and the liveliness of the press in the region. Moving forward, also we recognize that there are more established organizations. There are bigger organizations working in the region. For example, some of our organizations are members of the Southeast Asia Journalist Unions. as or some of us are members of the International Federation of Journalists. But membership in these bigger organizations or more established organizations also comes with let's say there are certain for example to you have to qualify for membership. So that could be, while that's good, that could also be limiting for organization within the region. So that's one advantage that we have. Since we are a loose coalition, we can bring in more organizations, we can bring in more associations into the group, and hopefully become a bigger coalition that works on various issues. But at the end of the day, I feel that solidarity would still be the main requirement for us to work together. And for that to happen, we have to work on continued awareness on the issues of individual countries, and also look for common ground where we can work together. So yeah, that's it from me for now. But I'm looking forward to the question and answer portion of this webinar.
Okay, thank you so much, Jonathan. Yeah, I mean, working in with multiple parties and from different, of course, it's the same region, but it's a different country, different sentiment, different issues altogether. Of course, it will create another. We have to find ways how to work together. Okay, now we will move on to our next song. We have like by far maybe around, say, how many? Maybe 1 hour before we get to the closing of the session. So okay, let us just go back to what have been shared so far. I think I would like to start my first question to John. And I will basically mix the question that I'm supposed to have to Anna, but I think you might be the best person to answer to this question. When you talk about monitoring democracy throughout the region, you see that laws being put from time to time in different countries. And Anna mentioned earlier that we would like to see states to repeal their defamation laws. And maybe from your experience, and you also basically talk about how defamation law plays role in limiting the chance or the ability for journalists to do their part. Do you see any country actually going towards that? Going towards loosening their defamation law, and or any laws that relates to journalism, and try to offer a better platform in their country? Or do you see the other way around?
I think instead of taking down laws that affect press freedom, there is an expansion of it rather than a reduction. And I think that's also the reason why media organizations are pushing back against it, and providing alternative platforms such as press councils to mitigate such risks. If you have other platforms wherein you can instead engage in a dialogue and be more open to discuss issues of other parties when it comes to reporting of the media, I think it's a good way to mitigate those risks. But I don't see the reduction of or taking down of other laws that would reduce the risks of attacking press freedom in the region.
Okay.
So, it's good, I think, in Indonesia, if that's the case, that they were able to decriminalize defamation. But then you have, as also been presented, defamation provisions in other laws that were introduced. So there is a loophole there. In the case of the Philippines, my country as well, it is still a criminal offense. Defamation is still a criminal offense in the country. And as you know, here in Thailand, there is also defamation laws that are also criminal in nature. So when it comes to that specific law, I don't think, that we're seeing improvements on it. But I hope that we also learn from the case of Indonesia in decriminalizing libel at least. So yeah.
Okay. I mean, just to follow up, maybe they have not done it, but do you see any intention going there? No.
Because for example, again, I take the example of the Philippines. No,
Mhm.
while we have a defamation law, we also introduced a defamation provision in our cybercrime law, which the penalties are double, are more than what the defamation law imposes. So instead of going the direction of decriminalization, we've actually improved on the penalties of defamation, instead of taking down laws that affect press freedom practice. I don't want to say improved, I have no better word, but
Yeah.
it made it worse. And
Okay.
that's a sad thing to see.
Okay. Understood. Okay. So yeah, maybe on the same connotation, but I'm just gonna go to Misika. We saw you shared about journalists being in prison. 5 of them by far. Hopefully, there's no more coming. 35 being reported. Maybe I would like to also know the action from the media houses. Normally when we talk about operation against journalists, now maybe what does the media houses play a role in protecting their journalists in your in the frame that you are in Indonesia, and if are there limitations for these media houses to work on to protect their journalists? Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you, Imran. That besides media houses have important role to can protect their journalists. It's not only particularly in their field, but also the holistic protection will be necessary for their journalists. It's like mitigation. Mitigation is like before you report or interview someone with sensitive issues like corruption or environmental issues, that's you need to assess what the risk and how you can to mitigate for your journalists from the risk. One of the example, the risk is not only the physically safety, but also about the criminalization potential from the resource person. Yeah, so the assessment is very important for the first step. After that, secondly, after the news is published, yeah, because the criminalization is coming from after the report is published in an online site or spreads by the media houses to social media. Yeah, so the protection, the ideal concept, as like you can protect by giving the legal assistance for your journalists if any case happen to or from your resource person report your journalist to the police. Yeah, I think the things important protection is how you can to giving the legal assistance, giving the psychosocial and also guarantee of the economics guarantee for their family, because if any defamation case or another criminal case happen for the journalist, it will be impacted also to their family. It's like they lose for income or they lose for their job for the future, or yeah, similar with this action. But unfortunately, that in Indonesia context, AJI is still see that the journalist is less supporting from the media houses.
Okay.
Yes, it's have a many factor. The first, because the law of the responsibility awareness from media houses owner, because maybe the media only targeted for the profit oriented. So if any public person who dispute with this news, sometimes the owners afraid that it will be impacted for their business. Yeah, so yeah, there's like yeah, I cannot to protect you because it will be to disrupt our media business. Yeah, so it's happened in some cases. And secondly, we also know about the small media is not have enough to can provide the assistant, or it's like the fund or legal assistant for the journalists. Yeah, so need to can collaborate with the legal aids is in Indonesia, because AJI also have a networking pro bono legal lawyers like that. Yeah, so it will be to can help for the small media organization to can protect their journalists if any case, but not only to limited for the criminalization case, but also to support if any another case happen to media and also the journalists. Yeah, but we need making to push the all media houses to can protect their journalists well, and we need to also put it's like a holistic protection mechanism that the established is very important, because if we note that the responsibility to can to protect of the press freedom in Indonesia not only obligate by media houses or journalist organization, but the mandatory is should be from the state. Yeah, so we need to push the government with press council, human rights commissions like that, to can work together to establish the holistic mechanism to protect the journalists and independent media.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So there's a lot more for us to do, right? It's a long battle for everyone.
Yeah, of course, it's as mandatory from the state.
Yeah. And I believe similar situation also happens in other countries. I know. Yeah, I can see the similar case also happen in Malaysia, and of course, since Jonathan and John is also like agreeing to it, so basically it's our problem altogether. Okay, so one question to Jonathan. We need to work together, and of course, you also mentioned that we can work in a loose kind of group, and of course, there's also chance for us to work in like more structured organization, and there will be chance, or there will be also potential for you have to be adhering to certain specification before you can be part of them. So but we have multiple issues that varies from region to region. So just a point blank question, from your experience, which works better, the small, the loose group that among us kind of thing from Southeast Asia, or going forward with the international that might have a different kind of set of cultural background, political background, and things like that? Yeah.
Okay. I don't think it's a matter of one form being better than the other. It's just that there are certain circumstances where, for example, like a looser coalition would be easier to work with. But of course, for example, if you're working with a more, let's say, more structured group, and with, for example, in terms of funding, that might be easier. But there are a lot of loose coalitions working together, and maybe at some point we could formalize our group into a more official in a more official organization. But for now, and especially I think it's for a lot of our organizations, it's we're new to working together, because one of the problems that SIAPA might have had is that there tended to be, let's say, someone would decide for the group. I'm sure that wasn't how they meant it to happen. It's just that there are certain dynamics where, let's say, a smaller organization might be shy, or might feel that they shouldn't speak so much. And I think it really helps that we're in this coalition, at least we are equal. So even if you're a newer group, even if you're if you're a larger group, people will ask each other their opinions. But of course, it's also important for someone to be taking the lead. So we really do appreciate and have to acknowledge that AJI has been doing a very great job of steering the group. But yeah, I think for now, since we're still getting to know each other, it's better for us to be a more loose group. So we can also, for example, we could add more organizations without having to check with, let's say, without setting a cap, for example, on how many members they have, or how many projects they've already done, or how wide their network is. So yeah, I think across the region also there is a tendency for getting a bigger tent, for getting a broader front, and then we can focus on certain issues or certain positions moving forward.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you, Jonathan. With the respect of time, I of course would love to ask more questions to our panelists, but we also have questions from our audience and from our public. So right now we have 3 questions, and I will go one by one, and I will just read the first one and open for any of the panelists that would like to take. From Muhammad Mutaqid, he says that I heard somebody say that journalists works on fostering democracy. Well, I'm curious on what journalists do in some non-democratic countries. How do they work and deal with some local values with maybe unworkable to the democracy system? So basically, this question is about how does journalism work on non-democratic countries? So anyone would like to take on this?
I think Philippines also have experience because the most.
Yeah. I think we can start. I'm not saying we're not a democracy, but maybe we're a challenged democracy. So one thing that we could do, or we are trying to do at least, is to promote democratic values, promote discourse, even if, for example, that means having to explain how the legislative process works, or how government works, even at that basic level, because it's foundational really for our societies to understand how the government works and how the government should be working before we are able to point out whether the government is what the government's responsibility is. Because sometimes I feel that there is a tendency to look at the president, for example, or to look to a high official like a provincial governor and expect them to do all the work or to basically we elect superheroes to solve all the problems. So helping readers or helping the audience understand that for example, the idea of separation of powers, the idea of checks and balances in government is very important. So we can start there. We can start with explaining how democracy should be working. Even if it's a simple story about, for example, lack of access to water in a certain village, we can look at which government agency should has the mandate or has a responsibility to be providing access to water. We could guide the audience into thinking about access to water as, for example, as a human right and that sort of thing. It's a hard process. I mean, we've been doing it for decades as well, no? But you have to keep at it. Yun,
Okay.
It's hard. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody would like to add on that?
No, can I just add to the
Yes,
question
please.
and some answer as well? I think what we also need to ask ourselves what we can do for journalists in such situations. Because, for example, in Myanmar, while there are still journalists and media organizations working in the country, several of them, of course, reverted to what they were doing prior to the democratic transition, which is to work outside the country. And they continue to do so. They continue to shed light on what's happening in the country, even if they're outside of the country. And while the situation there is not improving, and we hope that it would, it's important that we continue to support such efforts to provide information on what's happening in the country, because we cannot forget about what's happening in Myanmar.
Yeah.
We know several countries, for example, like Vietnam, where basically press freedom is non-existent. You don't necessarily have independent media in that country, but you have bloggers who try to push back, who try to still continue to shed light on what's happening in that country. And I think we also have to start asking ourselves, what can we do to support such initiatives? You know, because there are countries wherein there are worse situations, but then people who are concerned of those situations continue to push back and continue to shed light on what's happening in those countries.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wonderful, strong answer by John. Wonderful, I love that. Just like who give me. Okay. Ika, would like to add, or should I do?
So just some best practice from another undemocratic countries that we can do more reviews about the human rights violation from the state by to support from the journalists or the independent media outside of the country. Yeah, so I know that sometimes it's very difficult to can produce the investigative journalism while we still inside in this country. Yeah, so the strategy we can to collaborate. It's like the investigative collaboration with international media. So the voices, it will be coming from the outside to can preserve to domestic issues or from the ruling government. Yeah, so sometimes it's a very effective to get if the pressure is coming from the outside, and also we can to giving the report for the international human rights, so they can to publish, help the publish and help to voices our problem in the domestic.
Okay.
And in the last strategy, we can to use the UN mechanism as the to challenge the state is like the UPR vision, or we can to collect the voice from the special reporters or something like that.
Okay, awesome. Okay, I mean, yeah, this is work in progress, and we will hope to see better future. Let me go to the second question from Franz Sinaga. He is asking, how is the local journalists that are mostly pro-local or to the government policy and less critical analyze right now? Because I need to understand his question correctly. How is the local journalist mostly pro-local government policy and less of critical analysis right now? And it's different with national and international did, which is still report or critics power abusement or corruption issue. I'm trying to understand. I guess what he's trying to say is we have two types of reporting. One is the local journalists going for supporting the current policy, and how has it been done internationally in critics towards the policy. I hope I understand this correctly.
Yeah, may I first, because Indonesia has experience, it's like the ethical problem. Yeah, we noticed that during the online era, that's very easily for everyone to can establish or have the own media, and sometimes the media also only to focuses or for have a purposes for the political purposes or on any harmful news to can influence of the public society. But that important thing, if we note that the news or the media has the ethical problem, so please we can only to solve the problem with ethical mechanism, not to criminalize, because journalism is not it's not crime. Yeah, fortunately in Indonesia, because we have a press council, and we can bring all the ethical problem through the press council mechanism, and from the press council members, they can to evaluate or they can to review if any that I don't know ethical problem, or we can to found some things behind of the news. Yeah, so from the evaluation from the independent bodies like a press council, they can to solve and give the recommendation as ethical as well. It's like Indonesian press council have several recommendations like as like okay, the news, the media immediately have an ethical problem, so you have to it's like involve your resource person as the statement on your news report or something like that. Or if we have a serious ethical problem, as like the fakes of the article, yeah, sometimes the press council will be give recommendation to take down of the article because all the content is fake, something like that. Yeah, I think it's a very fair mechanism to can protect of the press freedom, but criminalization is not solution at all to can handle of the problem with the ethical. Yeah, so if you have the ethical problem, please you can bring with the ethical mechanism as well, because we have so many countries that still keep of defamation or anything else as like a fake news to criminalize of the journalists, and who's the benefits, who's that take benefit from the defamation article like that, only because the defamation or fake news law as like that who can easily criminalize of human rights defender and journalists, it will be giving more benefit to politician maybe, or the corrupt political actor, or the public actor, something like that. Yeah, so that's why it's like an Indonesia situation. The legislative members want to still keep the defamation as well in IP law, because they will give or have a more benefit from this article.
Okay. Anybody else would like to add?
Yeah. I'd like to answer the question as I think I understand it. I think local journalists or journalists who are working, let's say, outside the capital, would tend to be more supportive, or would tend to favor local policies, because we have to also recognize that they may be working under very difficult circumstances. In the Philippines, at least, local journalists or those in the provinces are at bigger risk of reprisal and attacks from local politicians, precisely because local politicians know where they are. It's easy for these politicians to reach out, let them know, or sometimes threaten them with legal cases or even physical harm. Many of the journalists who have been attacked in the Philippines are outside the capital. So that's one reality, or one thing that we have to acknowledge. And that also means that national media and international media could help amplify these stories, could help be more critical of these policies, precisely because they're outside of the risk. They're further from the risk that these local journalists face. So one thing we could do, I think, is to work with local journalists, talk to them, amplify the stories that they want to tell, or amplify the stories that of the communities that they work in.
I also have a different take and understanding on the question, no?
Oh yeah, please.
It's a very platonic question, I guess.
I'm so sorry.
The way I understood it is, if you are a local journalist who supports local policies, how will you be able to report critically on those policies?
Okay.
I think if you include the discussion on ethics, I think as a person, no, not just as a journalist, you have our own biases. But as a journalist, if you're not able to check those biases in your reporting, then you are looking at a possible ethical dilemma there. So I think you have to understand where you draw the line when it comes to reporting and in checking your own biases. If you think, well, I support this, I cannot be objective about it, then you tell your editor, and maybe you assign me to something else because I cannot be objective about reporting this. And I think if your reporters, if you're an editor and your reporters are not able to identify that, I think it's a task of your editors as well to identify whether the reporting of their reporters have been compromised in terms of, not being able to balance their reporting, and their biases are more prevalent in their reporting. But I think that's how I understood the question. So
I mean, of course, I myself think that the question can be both ways, but it's good that we try our very best to tackle it from both point of view. And I really appreciate for everyone to be taking effort, and get in touch with this question. Last question that we have is from our future journalist. He's now a campus journalist. He feels that this seminar is basically giving him a peek to the real world. And welcome. I hope that you, Christopher Castro, will be a good journalist in the future. And his question is, what can be the ways for journalists to be protected from these abusive laws? And we are seeing progress to our mission to gain freedom in the press. So, yeah, what can we do to protect ourselves? That's most important, I guess. Who will start? Anybody? Is Jonathan taking this first?
Okay, he seems to be from the Philippines. But I think it's problematic that we have to consider protecting ourselves from laws, considering laws should be serving the people. No? But given that, what we do in practice actually is, for example, since libel is still a crime, most newsrooms do libel checks, especially if it's a very controversial story. You do have to, because there are certain elements of libel in the Philippines, so you have to check whether your story will stand those tests, or so that's really more of a best practice, really. You have to check that your story will stand, that your story doesn't have holes, like doesn't have so you have to protect yourself by knowing how you might get in trouble by writing that story. For example, if you're doing a story and you feel that it might get you in trouble under for example, the anti-terrorism law, it's best to have an editor, or if have an editor check it at minimum. But also, if you have a lawyer contact, then you can ask them for legal advice on whether you could get in trouble by publishing that story. That said, especially in the Philippines, doing a good story, doing a balanced story does not mean that you will not be facing libel cases. That does not mean that you will not be facing criminal complaints. We have cases where journalists, for example, one of our colleagues, Frenchie Cumpio, is facing charges, facing cases under the anti-terrorism law for her reporting. So even if you do a good job, even if you do ethical journalism, that doesn't really insulate you from legal challenges, from legal trouble. But doing libel checks, checking your story against the law that could be used against you is one way to protect yourself. Unfortunately, it's still a long struggle ahead, even for just decriminalizing libel. But we have to keep at it, and it will take regional efforts would also help with that.
Okay, awesome. As usual, anybody you'd like to add?
Yeah, in Indonesian context, that student press community is also protected in our constitutional, because it's a part of the freedom of expression as well, and also from the press of law. But isn't the ideal concept can be protected well, but we have the lack of the one articles in a press law that's only mandatory of the press must have to as like a legal identity. Legal identity as the mandatory for all the media houses. But that's the student press in a university, they didn't have like a legal identity, but it's not to consider to can have the legal identity, because they as like the internal community in university. So that's why in a double standards is in Indonesia, the student press is one of the most vulnerable community that can be targeted by it's like a ITLO, because the reason is they don't have a legal identity, so they cannot to be part as the journalism as well. Yeah, so that's like our problem that we are facing now. Yeah, so how we can to protect the student press community, because we had some cases previously. Yeah, so first, AJI as the journalist organization has a recognized of the student press as our member. So that's one door that we can give protection to student press. So if any case or something like that, yeah, we can to give a fully support to them. Secondly, we also work together with the press council to can, that have sign the MOU to the Ministry of Education, and the MOU regulating about how the commitment of the university and the ministry can protect of the press, student press, it's like that. If any case or dispute of their story, please you can to also bringing the dispute to press council, not to police or not to courts. Yeah, so this is the first second strategy that we are now collaborating with the press council, and we hope that the sign will be happen soon. Yeah, so in the next election we can to give good protection to student press.
Okay, awesome. It's nice to have a press council in your country. We still have yet to have one in Malaysia. We are progressing towards that, but yeah, let's pray for it. Hopefully, I think the first tabling to the parliament will be happening maybe earlier next year. So that's for Malaysia. Hopefully, it will change something. John, would you like to add for this question?
Just something that's more a bit practical, no? Theoretically, I'd say ethical and professional reporting would help you, but I agree with Jonathan. It's not a guarantee. But I would say, because I've worked with organizations before that support legal, defense for journalists, and resources are hard to find. And in a more practical sense, I think, what the international community can do, especially those that provide funding, is to provide more support for legal defense.
Legal, okay.
Especially for these organizations who are helping journalists who face cases, because cases are expensive and tedious, and we need support, lasting support for that. So yeah.
Exactly. It will drain you.
Yes, definitely.
Squeeze you all the way.
True.
Yeah. Okay. I think we have finished all the questions by our audience. Before we close, I think I would like to give opportunity for everyone, each of you, to maybe give a conclusion or maybe your last words on the topic that we have today and things that we have discussed about. Since we have been starting from John since the start, I think let's just turn it the other way around. I'll just give the floor to Jonathan. Yes, please, sir.
Okay, so today, as we know, is the International Day Against Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists. So we have been keeping track of attacks on Filipino journalists. We have been keeping track of murders, the killings of Filipino journalists. But increasingly also, the challenges that Filipino journalists, and I see that this is true as well across the region. The challenges that we face are more are also in the legal field now, and are also so really while we need to keep an eye on on direct violence against journalists and keep an eye on these cases, we also have to be vigilant against other ways to silence us, to censor us, including using the law. Right now in the Philippines, the websites of Bulatlat and Pinoy Weekly are under a government order. There's a government order to block them, to keep Filipinos from reading them. It's in court right now. It's being heard in court, but it has been more than a year since that order was given, and it's really based on a vague accusation of support for communist rebels in the Philippines. So that's a sort of legal tactic that we should be watching out for, and it's something that we've also seen across the region. So I think that's one common point for us, or so that's one common starting point for us as well, to work collectively against these kinds of tactics to silence journalists and to keep critical information away from citizens.
Okay, thank you so much, Jonathan. Ika?
Yeah, we know that mostly of the region in Southeast Asia have similar situation, because the situation we face now is about the declining of democracy. Yeah, so that's why it will be have impacted on press freedom. Maybe in the future or after the election, we don't know well how the situation can better or not. But that we must believe that we will be have a good and big benefit from the work together with the collaboration. So I think this session also giving us the good chance also for each other to can making the commitment stronger. We can to work together stronger in the future, and not only in national context, but also we can still keep in the regional and international collaboration as well. It's not only for between the media organization, but it's important to can making the collaboration bigger among of the human rights organization or freedom of expression organization, or anything the organization who have a concern in human rights fields. Yeah, so thank you for having me, and a very good conversation and discussion at this moment.
Okay, wonderful one, Ika. Before I go to John, I would like to request all participants that have yet to fill in your attendance list. You may do so by referring to our chat box and look at the link. Just click there and fill in your details. That will be so much helpful for us. The committee has been working so hard to get this done. Okay, John, over to you.
Just a recollection. I was with an organization in the Philippines called the Center for Media Freedom and Responsibility. When we were pushing for the International Day to End Impunity, and one of the cases that was cited for this commemoration is the Ampatuan massacre. Where in 2009 more than 30 journalists were killed, covering an election-related event. The Committee to Protect Journalists said that since it has been 10 years since IDE was declared, and there have been 261 documented cases of journalists killed in the 10 years since IDE has been declared. And only, I think, 78, no one has been held accountable, they said, and 204 cases, or more than 78% of those, remain unsolved.
Okay.
So I think there is still more work to be done. And I will echo what I've said, that it is important that we continue to cooperate and collaborate among different stakeholders to address the situation now. And we thank you for inviting us to this afternoon, and we hope that we would be able to work with everyone here in your causes, in our causes, and I think we share similar causes. So thank you, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah, okay. So just to, I mean, of course, we would love to be meeting in person, maybe anywhere in this region. We'll find ways to do that. Maybe I will ask Novi to work on this. Okay. In general, just for me to conclude everything, this is a multi-level, multi-dimensional, multi-stakeholders issue. It is not new, but the problem is with the development of technology that we hope to basically make things easier. Governments has been also taking actions to make sure that they don't lose their grip on press freedom, and this is somewhere that where we need to work together. I totally agree with all the panelists where everybody agrees that we have to work in a coalition, work together, be it in a smaller one, loose one, tighter ones, doesn't matter as long as we work together. And this is where we should understand that we all carry similar battle, similar causes, that regardless of wherever we are, whatever happens to the others will impact us sooner or later. And of course, in this region, whatever being implemented by the neighboring country will also be referred and can be also adopted in your own country. So this is where we can see situation can basically change the landscape of how we can work. We agree and on the idea of there's a reduce or of trust on traditional media. In the same time, the bigger issue is that the decline of democracy make it worse, and this is another things that may be beyond our control as press practitioners, but still impacting us somehow, some way. Laws being put up there seems to be neutral, but it can be turned against us, and when it happened, there's nothing much we can do except trying our very best to basically defend ourselves. This discussion will need to be continued, need to be put together maybe in paper or in a resolution where we can send it to respective stakeholders in our own or our very countries. Thank you so much for your time. Participants, if you have not filled the form, please do so. And before we close everything, as usual, we love photos. And maybe I will pass the floor to Novi to control the photo session. Or should I just take over? You know what? Let me just do it. Okay, I will send a photo to Novi later. Okay, so let's just give our best smile. Give me a moment. Okay. Of course, to our interpreters, sorry, I would really would like to express our appreciation to our interpreters. They have been working very, very hard, taking turns, from one to another, and have a round of clap for them, yeah? Okay. Okay, so let's take a photo. Everybody, please give your best smile. Do not move until I say so, okay? Okay, just give me a moment. Okay, I think we are safe.
Okay.
Yeah, we are done. Yes. Sorry, this is an old computer. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Nice to see you. Hopefully to see you all in person sooner or later. Sure. And thank you to AJI for making this happen. And everybody in AJI has been working hard to make this happen. To all the panelists, thank you for your time. Hope to see you. And I think, yeah, goodbye.
See you.
Okay.
Thank you for all the
Bye.
participants. Jonathan, John.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.